What's up everybody, Matt Maran here for another weekly update. So there's lots of exciting news to go over here this week. And the first news story here is a very interesting picture that the General Motors Design Department's Instagram page officially posted this picture of a Camaro and just said like an emoji for what it looks like. And so they gave no information, nothing in the hashtags, just a really cool looking Camaro. Now, most of the speculation of other outlets are saying is that they think this is the scrapped Z28, and that's why they're comfortable sharing the picture, is that this is a model that's not going to happen. They're just like, hey, look, wouldn't it be fun if we made a Camaro that looked this awesome? And that's totally possible. We do know, there was Z28. Motor Trend broke the story that it, is in fact canceled, most likely, and it was going to use the new Corvette Z06 motor and be all kinds of awesome. So they think that's what this was going to be before it was killed off. I have a different opinion though. So my hunch here, and actually I think this makes a lot of sense, just last month Motor Trend was also reporting that the Camaro ZL1 is going to be getting a bunch of tweaks. There were some spy photos of it running around the Nürburgring, and basically the tweaks made a lot of sense. It's going to basically get all the same upgrades as the Blackwing CT5V, which means you get an 18 horsepower bump out of the supercharged motor. You also get the new Brembo carbon ceramic brakes. You get the newest version of the magnetic ride control and a bunch of other improvements as well, better cooling and stuff. And so my thinking is that, they never did update the looks on the ZL1s. The ZL1 still runs the same old headlights from the original 6th gen Camaro, does not have the restyled stuff, which I know is a relief because they totally botched the refresh on the regular 6th gen Camaro. And so the ZL1 was the better looking one here for the past few years. But, I feel like this is the perfect time for them to incorporate those new headlights, give it the more aggressive aero, and this one, obviously in this picture, would be the 1LE version with the huge rear wing and stuff. But, I think if they're going to have to tweak the aero anyway for, the extra cooling and all the changes they're going to make, I think this is the perfect time, because that was their whole justification with the ZL1, is that we're not changing the styling because we'd have to completely redo the aerodynamics if we're going to swap bumpers and stuff. So now they're doing all those changes anyway. They're out on the Nürburgring changing stuff, so you might as well go ahead and freshen up the looks a little bit, I would think, as well. It'd be kind of a strange way to tease it, to just post it on their design page. I agree, that is odd. Usually there's an official teaser on the GM media site or something like that. But this could also be a feeler. GM has been burned with their Camaro refreshes and styling changes in the past. So maybe they put this out as a feeler, like, hey, this is kind of cool. What do you think about this? And if everyone's like, yes, we love this, then they're like, okay, well, actually, that's the new ZL1. And if people hate it, then they'll just, be like, yeah, that was just a fun little thing we were playing around with and nothing to see here. So, that's just my personal thought and hunch. We'll see if that turns out to be true or not. It does seem to be pretty solid that there is going to be, these improvements to the ZL1 here relatively soon, and we'll see if it gets some new looks to go along with it. But man, that thing looks awesome, and I do hope they do put that new styling into production. But moving on to another really big story here this week is that Toyota has finally, after 15 years of the same generation, finally revealed the next generation version of the Tundra. This is the 2022 Tundra to be exact. Thankfully, it's entirely new with nothing that's carried over. It rides on a new fully boxed frame with bold styling both in the front and the back, which I know is probably polarizing to a lot of people. I personally think it looks great in person. I did actually get to see this behind closed doors, a TRD Pro version at Toyota HQ back in June. We just weren't allowed to talk about it or film it or anything like that, but it looks really sweet in person. It also looks massive in person too, but it looks very, very cool in my opinion. Anyway, mechanically, it throws out the V8s and instead provides two different V6 options. The first is a 3.5 liter twin turbo V6 from the Lexus LS and the new Toyota Land Cruiser. They say it's a new motor, but I think that's basically where it traces its origins back to that LS. It does 389 horsepower and 479 pound-feet of torque, which is 78 more pound-feet of torque than the old V8, so way punchier. Even though you're only up a few horsepower, you get way more torque with the twin turbo V6. It runs through a 10-speed automatic and still offers your choice of rear-wheel drive or four-wheel drive, of course. The top powertrain setup though is the iForce Max engine, which keeps the same engine but adds on an electric motor in the transmission's bell housing, so that keeps the other part of the engine the same. But anyway, it ends up doing a huge bump in power. It goes up to 437 horsepower and 583 pound-feet of torque. That officially gives it 13 more pound-feet of torque than the F-150 Power Boost and takes the crown for the most torque in the segment. The battery is only 288 volts though, so there's no real electric range here, but it can drive slowly up to 18 miles per hour on electricity alone. But it's, so mild that I don't even know if they're actually going to have hybrid badges on this, just calling it the iForce Max instead. But I think that that's, still going to be pretty good, with all the rolling and stop and go traffic and stuff. You'll be able to do that on electricity. That's going to be great and save people a ton of money on gas if you live in a place with lots of traffic. Also, it can now tow 12,000 pounds, which is 2,000 more than the old truck, but that's still behind the GM, Ram, and Ford, 1500 models that can tow a little bit more, but it is more than a Nissan Titan, so it has that going for it. Payload increases by 11% as well to 1,940 pounds, even though the bed is now made from composite material instead of aluminum or steel. But it's still very durable, of course, and of course doesn't rust or anything either, which is great. Another big change is the suspension here, which moves to a coil spring multi-link solid axle rear for better ride comfort, straight line stability, and handling. Also in the handling department, you get normal twin tube shocks on the regular Tundras, but the TRD off-road package adds Bilstein monotube shocks, and if you go up to the TRD Pro package, you'll actually get a 1.1 inch lift in the front thanks to 2.5 inch Fox internal bypass shocks with piggyback reservoirs, and the TRD Pros also get a thicker front sway bar, multiple skid plates, and Falcon all-terrain tires. Then there's also a multi-terrain select system that now has crawl control and downhill assist control as well to help you a little bit off-road. There's also an air suspension that's going to be available on certain trims and can be locked into a high mode to provide extra ground clearance up to 18 miles per hour. There's also adaptive dampers that are going to be available on certain trims as well, so I'm not sure how the mixing and matching is going to go with all those things in addition to the TRD stuff. Also, those TRD models get a multi-terrain monitor that uses front, rear, and side cameras for a 360-degree overhead view, but in those TRD versions it's aimed at trying to give you better views over your obstacles and things like that whenever you're off-roading. But you can of course get 360 cameras on regular Tundras as well, and they'll also help you with like connecting a hitch and doing towing and all that kind of stuff. It also gets trailer back guidance also in the towing department, so it'll help you to line up your trailer better there and back up and get it on the hitch and all that. And lastly, the interior has been thoroughly modernized as well with a huge 14-inch touchscreen, same one it appears you get in the Lexus NX. So this is the second Toyota vehicle to get that, so that's going to be cool. It gets wireless smartphone integration in that touchscreen as well, and also a Hey Toyota mode, so you can do extended voice commands and things like that. There's also a 12.3-inch digital gauge cluster that you can get, along with analog gauges that are going to be standard with the traditional little smaller center screen if you don't like the digital gauges as much. The rest of the interior though looks really fresh, but still really rugged and cool. It's awesome that you can get a red leather interior, and there's like a digital camo pattern for the TRD Pro models, which I think is kind of interesting. And anyway, there's no pricing for these yet, but they'll be on sale in December, so cool to see that. And just last week the Bronco Raptor was leaked out thanks to some forum members that spotted an order guide and very quickly showed that to the world. And so Ford this week came back and officially confirmed the Bronco Raptor with a quick teaser video that says Ford Performance is excited to share a sneak peek of one of the Bronco's special edition vehicles that will be available in 2022. Meaning there will be multiple Bronco special editions in 2022. It could be that Everglades trim that was also revealed in the order guide, but we'll have to see what they're planning otherwise. But anyway, as for the Raptor, Ford says more details will be shared later, but as you can see, it has the bold Ford grille across the front there, and looks very exciting so far. So we'll have to see all the mechanical details on it and all that. But anyway, interesting and very cool of Ford to just come right out and confirm that as well. And for some other Ford news, they revealed the 2022 refresh for the Expedition this week. And so there's also a new Timberline trim that comes along with it as well. But for the styling, it gets much cooler looking headlights and taillights, along with revised bumpers and new grills that of course change depending on the trim. On the inside, it gets even bigger changes though, with a new dashboard that integrates the 15-inch touchscreen from the Mach-E as an option. You can also get a base screen, which is a 12-inch unit, still really big. You can also get the digital gauges from the F-150 as well now. Other F-150 tech you can get is the hands-free Blue Cruise driving assist tech is going to be available here in the Expedition, so that's going to be cool. It comes standard on the Platinum trim, but you can get it on lower trims as well too, which is great. There's also a 22-speaker B&O stereo available now and a larger rear entertainment screen, or screens plural, there for the backseat occupants. The Timberline model here follows the same formula as the Explorer version, basically, with orange accents, black wheels, and more rugged styling, but it also gets some meaningful mechanical upgrades as well. You get 33-inch all-terrain tires, a retuned suspension for 10.6 inches of ground clearance. There's also skid plates from the Raptor. You get the trail turn assist software from the Bronco, and you get a limited slip rear diff. It runs a version of the 3.5-liter twin-turbo V6, but it's bumped up nicely in power to 440 horsepower and 510 pound-feet of torque. And so that engine is actually, a pretty notable improvement there of, 40 horsepower and a good bit of torque as well. And that engine also, if you don't want the Timberline trim, you can also get that engine in the Stealth Edition Performance Package, which swaps the rugged stuff for sportier street tuned look, lots of black accents everywhere, and you also get an adaptive sport tuned suspension in that trim as well. But if you want to go for the lower trims or the more luxurious ones, the Limited, King Ranch, and Platinum still run just the 400 horsepower version of that twin turbo V6, and then the bottom three trims still run the 380 horsepower version of that motor. So a bunch of different motors there, but it's nice that you can get the extra punch there with the Stealth Edition if you don't want to go for all the off-road stuff. But I think they all look cool. Even the Timberline trim I think is a pretty cool look here for the Expedition. And anyway, there's no pricing for these yet, but it'll be going on sale in the first quarter of 2022, they say. It's cool to see that. Honda has also revealed a refresh for the Passport for the 2022 model year, and it also gets a slightly more rugged version called the TrailSport Edition, although unfortunately it has a lot less upgrades than the Timberline Ford does. So we don't have too much info about the regular Passport refresh just yet. They're mostly focusing on the TrailSport version here, so we don't have any pictures of what regular Passports look like here. But as far as the TrailSport version, you can see it shares a lot with all the regular Passports, so this isn't going to be wildly different. All Passports get the Ridgeline's more truck-like front end here, you also get a new rear bumper with larger exhaust tips on all models as well. There's also new 20-inch wheels on EXL and Elite trims, then also on the Trail Sports you're going to get smaller 18-inch wheels that are unique and actually have 10mm wider tires and standard all-wheel drive in those models as well. And I think the tires have that little bit of a more off-road look to them like they do on the Ridgeline, like I talked about, where it's basically still a street, all-season tire, but it has a little bit of a knobbiness there to the edges of it. Anyway, other Trail Sport stuff, like I mentioned last week whenever I talked about the teaser for the Trail Sport, it's going to have more substantial off-road upgrades in later model years, but for this year, it's mostly just trim and badging. So aside from, again, there's other little tweaks, like I said, the slightly wider tires and stuff. So there are some little things there, but otherwise, it's just the orange accents and things like that you're seeing. And it's a cool start for sure. We'll see, how much further they take it. It's just kind of odd. Like, they're really open in the press release. They're like in future model years there will be things like skid plates, bigger tires, and all that kind of stuff. So they're already telling you, like, hey, that stuff's coming. Almost like, don't buy this version, wait for later versions if you actually want more off-road capability, which is kind of funny. And again, I think it just kind of sours the TrailSport name right out of the gate to be like, oh, it basically doesn't really give you much. It's just trim and badges, but then it's going to have more down the road. I just feel like they'd be better off waiting until next year or the year after, whenever they're ready to actually have the real upgrades, then start it out. And, that way everyone's first impression of TrailSport is, oh, cool, this has a lot more off-road capability, instead of just being kind of a cash grab this year. But anyway, cool nonetheless. And otherwise, Passports are all the same mechanically here for 2022, and that's all unchanged. But all 2022 Passports will be arriving at dealers this winter, so cool to see that. Acura has also revealed a bunch of really nice improvements here for the refreshed 2022 RDX this week. So you can see the front end here gets smoothed out styling with some cuts in the bumper that are similar to the new MDX, and kind of gives it more of a I guess, smoother nose than before. You get a thinner grille frame there and stuff. Out back, the regular models now get square exhaust tips as well, while the A-Spec model retains the circular tips that they usually have. The wheels are redesigned too, and you can now get 20s on the A-Spec and the PMC edition, which is cool. Speaking of the PMC edition, it's no longer the only way to combine the A-Spec and the advanced packages, thankfully. That's something that me and many other reviewers complained about. You know, you want the sportiness of the A-Spec, but you want the luxury stuff of the advanced. Now you can combine both of those packages without going for the super expensive PMC edition. So the PMC edition is still really cool though. This year's paint color that's exclusive is called Long Beach Blue, named after the color from the NSX. And yeah, it's the same thing where it's, a 5-day paint process. It's hand built in the assembly factory that does the NSX. It's shipped in an exclusive crate and everything. It's all very high end there for this PMCs, which is, part of what justifies their higher price tag. They're also only making 200 of the PMCs this year, so very rare and stuff as well. But as far as all the normal RDXs, the main thing here they really underlined is that it gets a dramatically quieter cabin, according to Acura, thanks to various improvements. And it just basically, in lower trims, it's smaller changes, but in higher trims, the more you go up, the more sound deadening they add. And they're adding a ton of sound deadening. So I would expect most likely higher trims of the RDX are going to get a significant weight gain this year. We'll have to wait and see what the specs come out to be, but hopefully that doesn't hurt handling too much. But they say it's going to be a lot more quiet, so a lot more luxurious inside. There's also some nice improvements too. There's now standard wireless Apple CarPlay and wireless Android Auto, which is a great addition. You get a wireless phone charger as standard. There's ambient lighting as standard now, and even a USB-C port. All good improvements there. And it's also safer now with not only more safety tech, like you have blind spot monitoring that now has greater range than it did before, but there's also even additional bracing in the rear doors for better side impact protection, which is kind of rare to even see that in a refresh at all. And I just love how Acura continues to really focus on safety, even though the RDX here is an IIHS top safety pick plus already. It already aced all the tests, and they're still adding in more reinforcements to make it even safer. And I really have to respect, that pursuit of not only the safety tech. Everyone loves jamming a million sensors and tech into all these things and say, oh, it's safe because it has a million computers. But actually, when you get into a real crash, it seems like Acura is one of the few that's really focusing on that these days, of it also is continuing to be really, really good if you do happen to actually have an accident as well. So that's great. And so yeah, mechanically it's mostly unchanged, but they did change the settings, they say, on the optional adaptive suspension to provide greater differentiation in the feeling between the different modes, which is going to be a really nice improvement, I'm sure. And the brake booster has also been retuned for better feeling, they say, as well. And they'll be arriving in dealerships in November. So great improvements there for the RDX. Ram this week has some smaller little changes to the Ram 1500s this week. There's 3 new special editions, and they do a lot of special editions with trucks in general. So I'm going to go over these very briefly. Nothing too exciting, but the most exciting one is the TRX now gets an ignition edition, which gives you this exclusive ignition orange color, orange accents on the inside, along with a few options bundled in, like a head-up display, panoramic roof, and a few other things. It seems like it's basically a fully loaded T-Rex, and it has a price that's accordingly high-end for this vehicle. So it starts at $93,280 for this ignition edition, and only 875 of them will be built. So that's cool. Next up is the Ram Red edition, which, like other Red products, supports the Global Fund to fight global health emergencies, which is cool. And for the Ram, it also gives you some extra red accents in addition to the badging, and it can also only be added onto a limited trim. Lastly, though, is the South Fork edition of the Ram. This also can only be added onto a limited model, and it gives you an exclusive mountain brown interior and a few bundled in options, and they'll all be arriving before the end of this year, so cool to see those. For some more significant Stellantis news here, Maserati has announced a reveal date finally for the Grecale crossover that's coming, the smaller one. And so, yes, it is going to be revealed on November 16th in Milan, Italy, and it will likely make its North American debut at the LA Auto Show a few days later, if the LA Auto Show actually happens. And they also showed another image of it here in camo. It's going to have styling, inspired by the MC20 supercar, and, as far as engines, that's the only thing we're kind of uncertain about. where it was rumored to be on the Alfa Romeo Stelvio platform, so it might just run 4-cylinder turbos, but there's also talk of 6 cylinders and possibly even 8 cylinders. I don't know how that would fit under the hood of that little crossover though, so I'm guessing, you know, the best case scenario is you're going to get the quadrifoglio motor in this, but we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, at least we only have a couple more months to wait here to see the new crossover from Maserati that they desperately need. Also, there's some exciting rumors here this week, potentially from Ferrari. So this is unofficial, of course, but this comes from the Ferrari chat forums. So a few of the forum members there claim that Ferrari is going to be debuting a new model in the Icona series as a follow-up to the Monza SP1 and SP2. And they say this new model will be based on the LaFerrari Aperta as far as its platform and stuff. But it's going to be inspired by the 330 P4 from the late 1960s. And so it could have possibly retro styling. We'll see, you know, if they anger fans like Lamborghini did with the refreshed Countach here. But unlike the LaFerrari, this vehicle is not going to be a hybrid supposedly, and so that'll be a little retro, I guess, with that. And instead, it's going to be powered by a version of the 6.5-liter V12 that's used in the A12 Competizione. So basically, you're going to get a mid-engined Competizione engine, you know, and something that's, you know, based on the LaFerrari with retro looks that'll possibly have the, you know, roof off since it's based on the Aperta version, which would be pretty sweet depending on how they style it. We'll have to wait and see, and that assumes this is even true. Supposedly, the four members claim it'll be revealed this November at the Finale Mondiale event in Italy. So we'll see, you know, if it does turn up there and, you know, what ends up coming out there. But anyway, sounds exciting if it is true. Lastly, though, for some not so great news, it appears that Bentley is slowly starting to phase out the W12 motor here finally. We were worried this was going to happen, and now, sure enough, it seems like it's starting to slowly happen. So Bentley actually confirmed to CarBuzz this week that the GT Speed models are now the only way to get Continental GT with the W12 here for the 2022 model year at least. And so otherwise, if you want a Continental GT, a regular Continental GT, it's now V8 only. And that's not so bad, though. I mean, it's still the sweet twin-turbo V8 that's used in all the Audi RS models and, you know, Lamborghini Urus and stuff like that. I mean, it's a very sweet engine. Of course, Bentley tunes it a little bit differently, but it's a sweet engine still. I don't think it's a huge loss to not have a W12 and a regular Continental. And again, since you can still get it in the Speed, you can still get the W12 if you really want it. So it's good they're at least offering it there for people still. But this shows you the writing is on the wall here that that motor is going to have to go away. I mean, Bentley's already committed to going fully electric, you know, I believe around 2030 or so. And, you know, they're starting to scale back their gas engines in general. And the W12 is going to be the first one to go, of course. So interesting there nonetheless, but at least it's not too sad for the news since, you know, the W12 still does live on strong in the Speed versions. So interesting to hear that. But yes, that's it for all the news this week, guys. Let me know your thoughts on all this stuff in the comments below. Thank you guys very much for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Take care.